Hello, my name is Anastasia Green, and my project presentation will be centered around a possible study regarding the perception and training effectiveness in corporate businesses versus mom and pop businesses. This is a part of the behavioral aspects of cybersecurity course in the University of Central Florida in the summer of 2024. Now, as all studies start, we have to get into the motivation behind it. Now, no matter what type of business that is on the block, whether it's corporate or starting out very small, every business keeps record of a lot of sensitive information on both employees and customers. This information includes names, the social security numbers, credit card information, and a whole lot more. Now, all businesses, if they're very good, do their best to protect that information in many different types of plans. However, the Federal Trade Commission has a very simple 5-step plan that can be applied to all businesses, and that is to take stock of the information, to scale it down, lock it, pinch it, and plan ahead for future breaches. However, no matter how good the plan for cybersecurity is, sometimes it is just as simple as someone clicking the wrong link in a phishing email for that information to get into the wrong hands. Now, going further into my research, there were many studies that were found based on the effectiveness of cybersecurity as a whole and the effect remote work has on cybersecurity. However, as I dug deeper, there was little to no research on the effect of the work environment on said cybersecurity. Yeah, especially when it came to two different types of business in the same field. And this was especially true in perception and training effectiveness, which are very much behavioral based. Now, the overall purpose of this study, based on that research gap, is to quantify and place a percentage of value on how much that work environment affects said perception and training effectiveness. And that leads to if said type of business, whether it be corporate or small, can be trusted with said personal information at the starting level. Now, going further into this, we must take into account the research question and objectives. And at its base, the question is, how does perception differ between corporate and small businesses, and how effective is the training in each said work environments? Now, with that in mind, the 3 objectives that are in place are to identify the similarities or differences in the perceptions between the employees of both corporate and small businesses, 2, to assess the effectiveness of training in corporate versus mom and pop, which is a small business, and 3, to determine, based on perception and training effectiveness percentages, if said information is safer in general with corporate or small businesses. Now, when it came to the research methodology, it is best to think of this as a 6-step program. In the large picture of this research methodology, we must take into account also how large a group we are taking in data from. A population of 3 corporate businesses and 3 small businesses in the same supply field so as to reduce the amount of variables in this study. Now, when it comes to sampling size, according to St. Olaf College, for populations under a number of 1,000, a minimum ratio of 30% is needed to ensure representativeness of the sample taken. Now, with this in mind, the sampling method to obtain that 30% would best be a stratified random sampling. Now, according to Penn State College, that type of sampling method works best when, and I quote, a heterogeneous population is split into fairly homogeneous groups. Under these conditions, stratification generally produces more precise estimates of the population percents than estimates would be found from a simple random sample, end quote. Now, with this type of sampling method, this would ensure there's no skewing of overall data from utilizing volunteers and would provide, again, more precise estimates than the simple random sampling. Now, when it comes to the research methodology steps, it will consist of 3 levels of assessment, all of them being anonymous, cybersecurity awareness training, which would be web-based, and an assessment phishing campaign. Now, starting with the beginning assessment, this would be to determine the willingness to participate and the starting level of awareness/training to set a baseline for the data. The second step, the cybersecurity awareness training, would be web-based, is based on the pros and cons. According to a blog on CyberSafe, 3 pros of such an approach would be the convenience of it, with it being accessible to more people, the scalability of such training, and how cost effective it is such as not needing to hire a person to come in person to teach people in a classroom setting. However, 2 big cons of this type of training would be the limited engagement between the teacher and the student, and also the limited personalization and to each person going through the training. Now, after that training takes place would be the middle assessment, so to speak, which would be to determine if there's any initial increase in awareness or effectiveness of that training, and ergo meaning did these participants actually learn anything? Now, once that middle assessment has been completed, there would be an assessment phishing campaign that would take a course over 5 months. Now, this could utilize a number of different simulators depending on the type of campaign that anyone would want to implement in this study. I personally would go for a simulator that implements phishing and smishing, which is SMS based, is type of tools used, such as QR codes, to then mimic more real world attempts at hacking at an early level. According to a blog in InfoSec by Andrei Antipov, one such simulator would be Fished.io, which does simulate both and are very much designed to mimic those real-world attempts. After that campaign, and the end assessment would be implemented. This end assessment would be to see what is retained and if the participants actually had effective training mindsets. After all this data has been collected, would come the analysis of the results in both the perception and the effectiveness of the training. Now, when it comes to an initial hypothesis about this study, one needs to consider what the general corporate work environment looks like and what the general small business work environment looks like. On one hand, corporate could put a lot more emphasis on keeping security tight. However, small businesses could put more weight in keeping the trust of their customers and employees. With this in mind, small businesses could have a greater percentage and trust that can be placed based on the perception of cybersecurity. On the other hand, and corporate businesses could have a greater percentage in the training effectiveness due to possibly going through training at multiple stages during their employment. Again, this is my starting hypothesis, which might show in the data at the end of such study, or the data might show something completely different. Again, thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope this presentation has helped explain thoroughly what this study would do and its end goals. Thank you again for your time. Here are the references. And bye.